Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of JRNI Coaching.
We're super passionate about all things coaching and want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training over 1,000 life coaches.
Dive deep into a more meaningful career, find freedom, and make an impact on the world around you.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about how to identify and lead with your strengths. Noelle, the word strength always resonates with me when you talk about it because it's a big word in positive psychology. No?
It is. And it's a word that has so many different connotations and different slices of society. And so I think it's important to unpack.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So, all right, let's toss positive psychology out the window. What does strength mean to you?
Oh man, for me, I think strengths mean like so on the surface, I sense gifts, what you're good at, what comes easier for you than as opposed to other people. Um, but also strength, I see as vulnerability, showing yourself.
That's awesome. So your definition is, I think, more closely aligned to positive psychology. When I think of the word strength, I think of like muscles and
Mm,
forcing things and pushing and being
right.
strong and showing up and being hard. Um, and and for that reason, I think that strengths kind of get a bad rap or can be confusing to folks.
Yeah, that was going to be my first answer, but I didn't want to. I wanted to people to think I'm smart, so I try to go deeper and a little bit obtuse.
Well, I mean, you did good. So I think that there are lots of flavors to strengths,
Right.
and they show up in different ways. Like if you're a really good manager, or you might be a really good listener to your friends, or you might be a great speaker. So these are typically things that you're good at. And when we think about strengths in this way, a different word that I'd like to offer up in place that I think is a better one is these are your talents.
Right.
These are things that you have a natural aptitude for. Um, but then when we flip over to positive psychology land, strengths take on a totally different tenor.
So strengths in positive psychology don't mean talents.
They don't mean talents.
Oh, interesting.
I know. It is interesting. And it's a juxtaposition that you kind of have to reconcile with because language is so interesting. Words take on meaning based on your lens.
Right.
And so when we're talking about strengths in positive psychology, the story of how they were developed and how they came to be included in that vernacular is really important. And it's a really good story. Um, so a long, long time ago, I feel like I should have a little children's book with me right now.
Story
Um,
time with Noelle Cordeaux.
Story time. A long, long time ago, there was a man named Chris Peterson, who has since passed away, and he's good friends with Martin Seligman, who is the head of the University of Pennsylvania Applied Positive Psychology program and also known as the godfather of applied positive psychology. And the story really starts with Martin Seligman. He was in a rose garden with his child, and he was in a bad mood, and he was consumed with his anger or whatever was going on with him. And his little kid was just kind of skipping around. And all of a sudden, she looked up at him and said, "Dad, guess what? I'm not like you. You are cranky. And
Mm,
I am going to stand here and smell the roses and enjoy my day." And that moment stimulated for Seligman a question. Is it that easy to change your lens just like you would raise the shades up and down on your bedroom window to let the sun in or shut it out? Is it that easy to flip your perspective?
right.
And that led him on this path of exploration where the entire medical model, the entire way that we think about psychology, the way that we think about humans, treatment, is based on disease. It's based on what's wrong with you. And so, very simply, Seligman began asking the question, what's right with you?
Mm, yeah, that's interesting.
It's a powerful question. So, let's before we get into character strengths, let's play around with that. So, if I were to say to you, John, what's right with you? What is your answer?
It's hard to answer because I think for a lot of us, because we just default to the negative, it's hard for us to see what our talents are, what is right with us, what is good. Um, I mean, I would say, oh, what's right with me is if I have an idea, I usually pull the trigger pretty quick before fear leaks in. So
Mhm.
I put a lot of weight on the actual attempt, not so much on the scoreboard. I'm big into the journeys. And then what's right with me is at 47, I try to show up in a way, and I don't I drop the ball all the time, but I try to show up um, in a way that is consistent and authentic. So I like myself.
Mhm.
That's important to me.
Yeah, so what I heard was, creativity and authenticity.
Yes, two
Awesome.
big words. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And what you also said was, this is how we gauge how we are good, which I think is really important when we're considering what strengths are in positive psychology. They're actually pathways to human goodness.
Hmm.
It's our capacity for helping ourselves and each other. So for you, creativity and authenticity really shows up in the way that you're able to help yourself and others.
Right.
And so for me, I'd say, what are the ways in which I am good? I'm kind, I'm
Hmm.
goofy, I'm smart, and those are my strengths. That's how I show up in the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so Chris Peterson and Martin Seligman started playing around with this idea, and um, what we have as a society when we treat humans is the DSM. John, can you explain a little bit about what the DSM is?
Yeah. It's the clinical, I guess you would say, Bible, where the prerequisites for everything from personality disorders to all the mental. It's putting a label on all the mental the struggles and the things that we go through
Yeah,
that are treatable.
that are treatable. So really
Yeah.
specifically, it gives you a whole manual on what's wrong with you.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of this.
It's the opposite of this. And
Right.
so Peterson and Seligman started asking the question, how do we quantify what is right with us? How can we create essentially the anti DSM, a way to help folks explore all of
Mm.
their psychological pathways for human goodness?
So is there actually an anti-DSM or a version
There
of that?
Yes, there
Yeah.
is, and I'm
Mm.
getting excited, you can tell.
Yeah.
So it's called the VIA, and
Right.
that stands for the Values in Action Classification of Strengths and Virtues.
Mm.
Now, I believe that if Chris Peterson had lived, the VIA, the Values in Action Classification of Strengths and Virtues, would have ultimately risen to the level of prominence as the DSM, but he passed away and his work was left incomplete, and it's been taken up by many other wonderful researchers, in the name of his legacy, but it never quite got there. So
Mm.
what we do have is we do have the VIA character strengths assessment, which is an assessment that helps you identify and quantify what your character strengths are and the capacity that you have to express and enact goodness in the world.
Right. Right. And I love that these are character strengths. So to me, it's more than just ability, right? It's more like kind of who you are, how you're wired as well. No.
Exactly. It's a deeper
Yeah.
cut of existence. They're not talents. These are
Right.
things that are innate to you as a human: kindness, generosity, hope, open mindedness, and they give us clues as to how we can live a values based existence from the inside out versus the outside in.
Hmm. So, what's the value in knowing this? Is it because if you know your character strength, then you know what to practice more,
Mhm. Yes,
right?
and that's a yes and.
Yeah.
So, to understand character strengths, there's 24 character strengths, and they're organized into 6 broad categories, which is one is wisdom and knowledge, another is courage, which I think is kind of your camp, love, that's my camp, justice, temperance, and transcendence.
Mm,
And all of us have all 24 of these character strengths present and accessible at all times. But we lean into them and we embody them differently throughout our lifespan.
right.
So, when we take the VIA, when we take this assessment, it gives us a rundown of the ranking of our strengths and our top 5 character strengths. All of the research that's been done to date shows that when you consistently utilize your top 5 character strengths, you are able to access flow states and deeper thresholds of interpersonal, intellectual, and embodied contentment.
Mhm. It's almost like, I talk a lot about your equalizer, and in that we always have to play with our own, as we grow and change, the bass, the treble, the pitch, to create that kind of sound that feels the most right to us. And it's like if you start to know your character strengths and what you're naturally good at, you're playing with the dials on your equalizer to make you more.
Yes, you're
Yeah.
spot on. And in the way that I like to think about this is it's a recipe. It's a
Mm.
recipe for baking your unique flow cake. And,
Oh.
all of the ingredients are absolutely delicious, but you just might not want to put them in the same cake all
Right,
at the
right.
same time. And so, when we look at our top 5, and especially as coaches or as parents or as educators or friends, it gives you a roadmap for who is this human in front of you and what are the ingredients that they need to have in their life in order to experience flow.
Mm. It also shows the, areas where you may be lacking, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I like to think about this when folks come to the space of coaching and they're really just kind of flopping around and they're saying, I don't know who I am. I don't even know what I want. I don't know where I'm going. The first thing that I do is say, okay, let's take a look at your character strengths because you may be out of balance. You may be out of alignment with setting
Mhm.
up the very foundation of your life in order to experience contentment. So it's kind of like in order to move forward on the path of goal accomplishment, you need to set up your environment and make sure that your emotional and psychological conditions are met in appropriate ways.
So when you say environment, you're talking about, life spaces? You're talking about, friendships, relationships, or what do you mean by
Yeah,
environment? Or
all
or
of
or
it.
you also, like, where you live, everything, huh?
Everything. So, one of my top character strengths is humor. And I suspect that, John, one of your top character strengths is humor as well. So, if you are in
Many
an
would disagree, by the way.
no, but
Yeah.
it's not about, well, this is a really great example. It's not about how others perceive you, it's about how you experience life.
So you mean when you say humor, you're saying that I try to find I'm very dry and sarcastic, but I try to find humor in life as I go throughout the day, right? You're not talking about how funny someone is.
Exactly.
Okay,
So
got it.
if you're in work environments, friend environments, or relationship environments where no one's funny, no one thinks you're funny, and nobody wants to use humor at all ever, what
Right, right.
happens? What happens to you?
Just a dead leaf, a crusty dead leaf.
Boom. So
Yeah,
that's how these character strengths work. The same thing happens to me. I just
yeah.
kind of get really quiet and I shrink
Right, right.
when
Yeah,
that
I know
happens.
that about you. You when you have fun and you're laughing, you lighten up, and the goofiness in you comes out and makes you thrive, as opposed to if it's just dial tone and no humor, all seriousness. I think that's kryptonite for you.
Oh, it is, and I
Yeah.
get listless, and I start pacing, and I start trying to
Mhm.
figure out how to get out of the room. Like,
Right, right.
it's no good, and so
Yeah.
for me, knowing that's one of my top strengths, that's one of the things that makes me come alive when
Mhm.
I'm sourcing my own conditions for goal accomplishment. I need to make sure that I have adequate access to humor, or I will shrivel up and die.
Mm. Yeah, so knowing that about yourself,
Mhm.
that's important.
It is important. And this ranking is also important to understand, because it's not a top to bottom ranking where the character strengths that are in your bottom 25 you're not good at, or you're terrible at. That's not the way this thing works. It's basically a statement that, okay, these are not things that you need in order to experience flow. And if there's a strength that's in your bottom that you're like, wow, I think I would really benefit from having more of that in my life, you can experiment with changing the conditions of your life and see if that strength pops up. And it's a really interesting way to begin thinking about living from the inside out versus the outside in. It's changing the conversation from, what should I be doing because others or society says so, or driving ROI, or using my talents to make money or make somebody else money, versus saying, what are the conditions in which I as a human thrive?
Mm. Man, I love that. That just the idea of that allows you to let go of so much that keeps us, bogged down and unhappy.
Mhm.
The grips of society.
Yeah. And so when we take the time to learn about our strengths and we lead with them, it changes everything. It changes everything about the psychodynamic approach to life. So, um, one of my other top strengths is my capacity to love and be loved.
Mhm.
I have to be environments where people let me love them.
Mm.
I have to. If that
Yeah.
doesn't happen for me, I shrivel and die.
Yeah, so if someone says, I don't want you to love me," that's not the right space for you.
No, that is not the right space for me. That is a quick exit, stage left.
Yeah. So this is actually, it's a vehicle for someone to do, self-inventory first, and then take that, knowledge and learning, and then, actually, feed and grow your character strength so you, connect more to yourself.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's secondarily a really wonderful vehicle to learn all about the people who you care about.
Mm.
So if this is your child, if this is your partner, if these are your beloved colleagues, understanding, what makes them tick, or why someone might be a little bit blue. Perhaps they're not being fed appropriately in terms of their deeply held character strengths. Perhaps they need a little bit more humor and a little bit more love, and that human plant will start to perk up.
Right. So then knowing someone else's character strength, someone that you care about, how can you support and encourage them instead of ignoring them? Right.
Yes, yes. This is again one of the first thing that I do with my clients when they're really stuck is say,
Mm.
"All right, what are your character strengths and how do we need to feed you?" So, appreciation of beauty and excellence is one. And for those folks, the pandemic has been really, really hard. So, appreciation of beauty and excellence is if you have no access to art, if you have no access to music, if you have no access to, awe and mystery through the great outdoors, it feels really stinky. So, our very own Coach Pam, this is one of her top character strengths. And at the start of the pandemic, she was starting to feel really poorly. And I
Mm.
know this about her and I love her. And so I started sending her museum tours, virtual museum tours.
Oh wow, nice.
And she came back and said, that made such a big difference for me. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah,
It
I
increases
think.
your energy.
Yeah, but it also builds relationships.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep. And so if anybody out there is interested in this, There is the VI Institute on Character. Give them a Google and you can take the assessment. And if you're ever working or interested in working with a coach on this, check out our JRNI coaches. Everybody's been trained in this and everybody's versed in character strengths. And we have a lot of awesome coaches who specialize in character strengths.
Yeah. So whether you are a coach or not, this is just a great place to start as a human being.
Yes.
Good tools. All right, guys. Thank you for listening and explore your character strengths. Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to jrni.co/everything to explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a strong community to do it in. We created JRNI Coaching to equip you with the tools, training, and community you need to attain your goals.
Join JRNI Coaching and begin your journey towards personal freedom and a transformative state of growth today. That's jrni.co/everything.